How is it that it took us 10 years to find Osama bin Laden after the 9/11 attack, despite the fact that he had threatened the United States for years? Two embassies were blown up in East Africa by Al Qaeda. They sunk the USS Cole in Yemen, and they tried to blow up the World Trade Center. How is it that we couldn't determine if Russia was going to invade Ukraine? How is it that we had no boots on the ground or no spies inside of the Wuhan lab before COVID-19 was unleashed? What is the history of the CIA? Is the CIA still needed? What does it mean to have unique individuals that are needed in the CIA? Why is being a part of the CIA an art and not a science? Sam Faddis, the author of Beyond Repair, The Decline and Fall of the CIA, is going to be joining us to talk about just those things. You're going to want to stay tuned. You're not going to want to miss a second of this interview. We'll be back. All right, welcome to the Carl Jackson Show. Guys, I've been looking forward to having this guest with me. His name is Sam Faddis. And he has worked with he served for 20 years as an operations officer in the Central Intelligence Agency. This includes as a department chief at the CIA's Counterterrorism Center and as a chief of station in the Middle East. He earned his BA at Johns Hopkins University and his JD from the University of Maryland Law School. So I know you guys are going to be excited to hear from my guest. He's also the author of Beyond Repair, The Decline and Fall of the CIA. The book was written over 10 years ago, but it is extremely relevant today, which is why I wanted to have him on. So Sam Faddis, welcome to the Carl Jackson Show.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Listen, thank you. I'm so glad that you were willing to join us. Sam, listen, I've been looking at this bureaucratic state that has been festering, not in the CIA. This is why I wanted to have you on. I wanted to learn more about the CIA, but the FBI, the DOJ. I've interviewed Kyle Seraphin. I've also interviewed Stephen Friends, former FBI whistleblowers, and they talked to me about basically the growing deep state, the bureaucratic state within the FBI. But I got to be honest with you, I wasn't completely sure of the operations that the CIA underwent, which I read what's imprimis. I got this in the mail, if you can see this, Sam, from Hillsdale. And then I later listened to you on a Hillsdale podcast, and I was like, oh, my Lord, I've got to have this guy on. So, Sam, again, I'm so glad that you've joined us. I do want to start here. You say, actually, it was in this imprimis, the CIA is not performing at the level that we require. It is not keeping us safe. It must be repaired, and it must be repaired quickly. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, well, I think I appreciate you grabbing a hold of that, because I think that's the critical place to start, right? Which is, we need a human intelligence organization that collects human intelligence abroad. When I say human intelligence, I mean not spy satellites and NSA and stuff. We need guys that go out and do this the old school way, which is recruit sources inside terrorist organizations. For instance, because the danger has not gone away. The danger gets greater every day. And there's a lot of stuff you're never going to know, like, like the plans for 9/11. You're not going to know if you don't have a spy inside a very small circle of folks in Al-Qaeda. And we could go on down the list, obviously. You want to know if Vladimir Putin's really getting ready to invade Ukraine? You can watch him line up troops on the border all day long. That does not tell you whether he's bluffing, whether he's trying to intimidate them, or whether he's going tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock. The only way you're going to know that really is if you got somebody in his inner circle. So this is old school. It's been around for thousands of years, right? It is, if anything, more critical than it ever was. But look, espionage is a very arcane world. Right? It's not a science, it's an art. It requires very special people, very highly trained, but also functioning in an environment that is very flexible, very flat, very creative, if you will, right? You can't paint a masterpiece by bureaucracy. You can't run intelligence operations by bureaucracy. So the first problem we have that's been around for a long time is just too much bureaucracy, too many layers, too many guys that have never run an op thinking you could run this like the Social Security Administration. Now we've layered on top of that, as I said in the speech at Hillsdale, now we've added to that politicization. Now, in addition to these guys being stiff and slow and ineffective, now we have folks, particularly at the top, who think their job is to play with American domestic politics, to influence the direction of the country. These are things that the CIA shouldn't be within 10 miles of, right? It's a foreign intelligence organization. Its job is not to spy on Americans. Its job is not to play Praetorian Guard and install emperors. So that sort of a toxic mix of bureaucracy and politicization brought us to where we are now with an organization that we've got to fix because the danger hadn't gone away.
You know what? Listen, Sam, I'm so glad you went there. I actually want to come back to the points, some of the points that you just made a little later in the show. But I'm interested in the history of the CIA, where it began. I heard you in another interview talking about how the CIA was created after World War II. At first, there was another organization called the OSS, and then later it became the CIA, I believe, under FDR. I got to be honest with you, Sam. I'm kind of surprised at the autonomy that the CIA had under FDR, given that he was such a big government type guy, but this is how the CIA works best. Your response?
Yeah, well, so when we went into World War II, obviously obviously the war had been underway for some time. We entered World War II after Pearl Harbor. Completely surprised, flat-footed at our biggest base in the Pacific. FDR created what's called the Office of Strategic Services, the OSS. Predecessor to CIA in 1942. And it was the first such, if you will, national level intelligence collection outfit. That becomes, it gets a little complicated here, but we can skip over the nuance. That becomes the CIA after the Second World War. What's the mission of the CIA? The mission of the CIA, put simply, is to make sure we never experience another Pearl Harbor. Nobody will ever be able to do that to us again. When you look at 9/11, you can say, well, quite a few decades down the road, and we failed in that objective. But you're absolutely right when you say, I don't know if autonomy is the right word, because I'm not suggesting rogue operations. The CIA ought to be as responsive to national authority as the United States Marine Corps is, right? When you whistle them up, your adversary ought to fear the fact that you turned them loose. On the other hand, you don't go to bed at night thinking the 1st Marine Division is marching on Washington. CIA ought to work the same way, very effectively, but obviously completely responsive to national authority. But it must move fast, and it must be flexible, and it must be creative. You can't sit around in the field with an opportunity to go take out bin Laden and submit your proposal to 12 layers of review by middle bureaucracy back in D.C. Because if you do, it's a waste of time. By the time they make a decision, yay or nay, that window of opportunity will have closed. You can't run ops technically.
All right. Now, again, just a reminder, I'm speaking to my guest, Sam Faddis. He is the author of Beyond Repair, The Decline and Fall of the CIA. We've heard a lot of stories about the FBI and the DOJ, but we haven't heard much about the CIA, and that's exactly why I wanted to have Sam on. And again, I've read through a speech of his that he gave at Hillsdale College, listened to him in another interview, and I just thought that he would be the perfect guest because we need these agencies. Sam, I got to be honest with you. I look at the FBI and the DOJ, and I'm like, listen, I think that we can at least shut down the FBI, in my opinion. But I look at the CIA after reading through your speech and some of your material, and I'm like, I don't think that's the case with the CIA. How important is the CIA to the safety and the sovereignty of the United States of America, in your opinion?
It's the single most important agency in the federal government when it comes to national security, and it's not close. And look, the necessity gets greater every day. With technology, with the multitude of threats, a terrorist group can create a biological weapon using stuff you can basically buy off the internet. And if they got a couple of decent lab techs, they could put together a biological attack on almost no budget that could kill millions. That's not hyperbole. That's not science fiction. One of my jobs before I retired was to run CIA's weapons of mass destruction terrorism outfit. That's what we did all day, hunt down those threats. So you think you're going to find those guys with a spy satellite? Good luck. You're going to find those guys because you have a source inside their group. And there's nobody else that can do that but CIA. Unfortunately, they're not cutting it right now.
You know what? Listen, Sam, we only have just over a minute before we come up to the first break here. But I mean, just hearing you say that stuff is fascinating. I honestly, I can't imagine some of the stuff that you've seen and some of the stories that you have to tell. I would love to meet you one day and listen to, or face to face anyway, and listen to some of those stories. We only have a minute before the break, but here's where I want to get started on. How did the Cold War affect the CIA? You mentioned that it began growing bigger, it began growing more bureaucratic. What impact did the Cold War have on the CIA specifically? We have about 40 seconds before the break.
Yeah, it created what somebody else has called bureaucratic hardening of the arteries, right? Too big, too stiff, too ponderous, and too risk averse, right? When you're playing against the Russians, most of the time they will play by the rules. Al-Qaeda and those groups don't play by the rules, and you got to be willing to take more risk, more physical risk to operate in that environment.
All right. Again, I'm speaking to my guest, Sam Faddis. Go out and get his book. He is the author of Beyond Repair, The Decline and Fall of the CIA. The book was written, I believe, in 2009, but it is still relevant, if not even more so today. We'll be back with more of Sam Faddis. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Carl Jackson Show. Again, I'm joined by my guest, Sam Faddis. He is the author of Beyond Repair, The Decline and Fall of the CIA. Before we went to the break, I was asking Sam, how did the Cold War affect the FBI, the CIA? He talked about how it grew bigger, basically slower, more bureaucratic, and obviously this had to play a part, Sam, in the 9/11 attack. You mentioned in your speech that you gave at Hillsdale College that, you mentioned the Al-Qaeda hijackers, if you will, and they weren't strangers to the CIA. And then you just mentioned a litany of things that I hadn't really forgotten about, I guess, but you did help refresh my memory. How Osama Bin Laden had been a threat for years. They blew up, Al-Qaeda did, 2 embassies in East Africa. They sunk the USS Cole in Yemen. They tried to blow up the World Trade Center. So it's crazy to me when you go back and you look at this history, how we missed 9/11. It doesn't even make sense to me, except, as you mentioned, spying is definitely an art. It is not a science. So obviously, if we're not letting the CIA be the CIA, in your opinion, are we going to experience more 9/11 type attacks as a result of that?
Yeah, that's a given, and I'm not. I wish I couldn't say that, but it is a given. Look, prior to 9/11, there was no mystery that Al Qaeda was coming for us. You just delineated. I mean, you don't have to speculate. They had already attacked us, took out 2 embassies. Tanzania and Kenya, killed U.S. sailors on board the USS Cole. So a bunch of people, myself included, but a number of other folks I know, proposed operations against bin Laden. There was a proposal to kill or kidnap him when he was in Afghanistan. There was a proposal to go after his operations in Sudan before he even moved to Afghanistan. Over and over and over. Routinely turned down for one reason or the other. Now, the other thing that obviously happens in a bureaucracy is when everybody can see that the ops don't get approved, people stop proposing operations. They begin to self-censor. They begin to, you start talking about putting together an op, and what do your buddies tell you? Your buddies tell you, stop wasting time, brother. What are you doing? You're proposing an op, they will never approve it. move on, work another target. They have made clear they will not approve it. So the organization shuts down. It's not just you're not successfully recruiting the sources. After a while, you're not trying to recruit the sources.
Okay, I mean this is absolutely baffling to me. I have to pause. I have to pause here, Sam. Help me to make sense of the fact that you had administrations that did not want to go after Osama bin Laden, despite the fact that he was already a proven threat to us. What would the political calculation be, or would have been, in your opinion?
Yeah, well, see, this is another critical piece of the puzzle. You can pass intelligence to policymakers all day long. If they don't want to hear it, they'll figure out a reason not to listen to it. So throughout the period that we're talking about, I mean, Bush was president when 9/11 happened, but the run-up, all of this happened while Bill Clinton was in the White House. What's his central tenet? The Cold War is over. We're reaping the peace dividend. We don't want foreign threats. We don't want to be talking about that. We want to be talking about people having a better life here, making more money, all of this stuff. I don't want to hear it. Look, and that reverberates down into the bureaucracy. Now, you would hope you have people in the CIA with the moral courage to say, I don't care if you want to hear it, Mr. President. I'm going to keep bringing it back to you. People disappoint you, right? Bureaucrats begin to say, the president has made his intentions clear. Leave it alone, move on, even as the threat grows. Look, I recruited a guy inside Al Qaeda in '97, I think. He was headed to East Africa. He was a finance guy, basically, and he was going to help them set up their networks in East Africa. I got away with recruiting that guy probably because I was moving too fast for them. In other words, I put him on the payroll. They made me shut that guy down and turn off that source, the guy that was going into East Africa. Now, that's not me blowing my horn. That's me using a personal example of the kind of thing that was happening to a lot of people. The day after 9/11, they came to me from Counterterrorism Center and asked me if I knew where he was. I said, I don't even understand that question, buddy. I recruited a terrorist. He never knew my true name. He never knew anything about me, and you made me shut down the op 4 years ago. We don't exchange Christmas cards. I have no idea. Where is he? Probably putting together the next op against the United States. But you guys made us shut that down. And this kind of thing, as I say, my deputy in Iraq back in '98 put together an op to go in and kill or capture bin Laden at Tarnak Farms in Afghanistan. Exact location, people on the ground, Afghan support. We end it now. They disapproved that operation.
Wow. Good Lord, that is jaw dropping, Sam. That is jaw dropping. I'm almost speechless. I am almost speechless. That is absolutely insane. So the mastermind of 9/11 could have been taken out. We had the opportunity to take him out, had all the information we need. We knew exactly where he was, but for some reason, the administration at the time, that was the Bush administration. Am I wrong?
No, this would have still been Bill Clinton.
Okay.
In typical bureaucratic fashion, what they said was this: you do not have approval to kill him. You do have approval to capture him, but only if you guarantee he will not be killed in the effort. Which translates to, if he's killed in the effort, you guys will have basically committed murder. At which point you're saying to a bunch of guys, so you want us to go in on the ground, way out on the tip of the spear in Afghanistan into a heavily defended compound, and if anybody dies, you're hanging us out to dry. That's what you're telling us. So the answer is, well, obviously we're not running that operation, which was obviously the intention of the White House. That way they can say, well, we didn't technically shut you down, but we did make it physically impossible for you to run the op.
Unbelievable. And thank you so much for clarifying that that's Bill Clinton. I can stand Bill Clinton. I was hoping it wasn't George W. Bush. Even though hindsight 2020, I'm not as big of a fan as I used to be. But I'm so appreciative of you clarifying that. So let me ask you this. You talked about self-censoring in the CIA. How much of that did you actually see as a result of stories like you just mentioned? How overwhelming did that become? Or is the CIA, in your opinion, kind of feckless or hand tied to this day as a result of self-censoring?
Well, it's definitely hampered. I mean, let me make it clear. I think that you still have a huge number of men and women who go to the CIA for the right reasons, and who and it's not for the money and it isn't for the recognition. They go there because they believe in the country and they believe in the mission, and they're still there and they're still trying to do good things every day. But are they hamstrung by the bureaucracy? Are they shut down? Sure. I mean, I can be an operations officer in Turkey. I can dream up an op. I can put together a proposal. I can't even send that message to headquarters unless my boss presses the button and releases it. So I don't even have to get to the point of having headquarters shut it down. If my chief of station knows headquarters doesn't like that proposal and he doesn't want his boss pissed off at him, that message will never even make it to Washington, D.C., right? I don't have some automatic capacity to do that. I'm part of an organization. So once that ethic or that feeling or that dynamic gets loose in an organization, it filters down, right? You at every level, the boss is going to do what the boss, what he thinks his boss wants him to do.
We have just a minute, actually 50 seconds before the break. I want to get started on this rules of engagement. And let me see how I can frame this. The rules of engagement. How much danger is the United States of America in because of the politicization of the CIA and the rules of engagement process that the CIA is hampered by? We have 30 seconds before the break, and we can come back to it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess in 20 seconds, in huge danger, man. I mean, this is not a game, and there's some really nasty, evil people out there, and you can't play nice with them all the time.
Okay. All right. I want to come back to this point because I'd like to know what our enemies think of us when they know that, or they believe we're a paper tiger in essence. All right. I'm speaking to Sam Faddis. Stay tuned. We'll be back with more on the other side. Okay, welcome back to the Carl Jackson Show. And again, I'm back with my guest, Sam Faddis. He is the author of Beyond Repair, The Decline and Fall of the CIA. Guys, we've heard plenty of stories. We've heard from whistleblowers from the FBI, but we've never heard from someone that was with the CIA. And Sam served for 20 years as an operations officer in the Central Intelligence Agency, and that included as a department chief at the CIA's Counterterrorism Center and as a chief of station in the Middle East. So I can't even imagine some of the stories that Sam would have to share with us. You've heard just bits and pieces of some of those stories. Sam, how does it feel? How does it feel just from a personal level or on a personal level? How does it feel knowing that you played a part in some very important parts in American history? You ever think about it in that way?
Yeah, probably not. But look, I think that's why people go to the CIA, right? I mean, CIA gets paid on a federal pay scale. So, you're not, I'm not on food, I wasn't on food stamps. I wasn't socking away the money either, right? You're not there.
Right.
You're not there to roll in cash. And by definition, you're not there to take victory laps or show up and get medals pinned on your chest. I mean, when you get a medal at CIA, they take you to the auditorium, you walk across the stage, they hand you the medal, you walk to the end of the stage, they take the medal back and they put it in a safe. That's not a joke.
Wow.
So I have some here now that I'm retired and now that I came out from undercover. But so why do you do it? You do it because of mission accomplishment. And if you're doing it right, even with all the obstacles, you get a chance to make a real difference. I mean, I remain a fan of CIA. When I decided to retire, and I decided to retire, they asked me to stay. It was fundamentally probably because I thought I can't fix this from inside. The only way it can be fixed is to talk about it outside. But good Lord, it needs to be fixed because it's too important.
I want to get back to this topic of rules of engagement, and then I want to talk about, because I think you just illustrated it here, Stam. I'm sitting here and just wondering about all the stories that you might have and so on, etc. But it takes a specific type of person to become a CIA agent, and I'm going to get to that. But first, back to this issue on the rules of engagement. Maybe I was being hyperbolic. Correct me before the break. Correct me if you feel the need to. But when we're weak when it comes to our rules of engagement, and listen, I don't want the United States going out and killing people willy-nilly, but there are bad guys that are out there. There is evil that exists. So when we pull back in operations, just like you mentioned earlier, what does the enemy think of us? Do they feel, in your opinion, more emboldened? Have you experienced that? Have you seen that where, voila, it ends up being an attack on America or against Americans and somewhere where they might be stationed?
Without question, that is a very real dynamic, and it's at play every day, right? Look, one of the senior guys we captured from Al Qaeda after 9/11 was asked about, I think it was after the Cole bombing. At one point, Bill Clinton authorized a strike on Afghanistan. And that strike consisted of firing Tomahawk cruise missiles at a training facility in Afghanistan. Okay. A training facility in Afghanistan for Al Qaeda consists of some mud huts and a big bare area where they run around and shoot things. In other words, there's no infrastructure there. This isn't taking out a base. You fire incredibly expensive high-tech missiles at a bare mountainside in Afghanistan, so you can claim to the American people that you did something when you didn't do a blessed thing. And what this Al Qaeda leader said to us is, he said, when I saw that was your response, I knew you were, I can't remember his exact words, but what he said was, you're weak and feckless and won't defend yourselves, and we were emboldened. What I used to tell junior officers running counterterrorism work in the Middle East was, look, you're hanging out with your man, with your asset, your source. He calls you brother, you call him brother, you put your arm around him, you're cozy. He's your guy, you're working. Understand that all of that ultimately means nothing if at the end of the day, he is not more afraid of you than any other person on the planet. Because
Wow.
when you send him back inside Al Qaeda to do his job, and they suspect him, and they're threatening to cut him up in little pieces, and do the same to his firstborn male child, because in his world, that's who he cares about most. I got news for you. He's not going to automatically choose you over that, right? If they terrify him more than you, he's rolling on you. That's the real world. That's what happens. We used to do drills in training, in preparation for going downrange running counterterrorism ops. What are you going to do if they try to snatch you off the street? Hezbollah grabs you, they want to drag you away. You're the next hostage. What the drill is, I don't care how many of them there are, you pull your weapon and you start shooting. If we're going to end this, you may kill me. What you're not going to do is make sport of me. You're not taking me away. You're not cutting me up in little pieces and torturing me. We're going to shoot it out here. Any chance I have to survive this, it happens right now, right here. And I would rather die here than let you have control of me. So it's not a hooray, there's no dramatic music that plays when any of that happens. You're just saying this is the real hard world of operations in the environment we're talking about. So you can't go into that world and be all lovey-dovey and turn the other cheek and we'll just kind of massage this. You're either, again, this is as you suggested, we're not talking about turning into the enemy. We're not talking about killing innocent people. We're not talking about any of that. But you're either going to accept that hard reality and act that way, or you have no business being in that world. And that's another element, that edge, if you will, is something we have also lost along the way.
This and that's where I want to get to, or that's what I want to get to. We have a few minutes left in this segment, and Sam has agreed to stay for the entire program, and I'm so glad that he has, because I still have tons of questions. I definitely want to get to the solution to all of this, but going back to the individual. You wrote basically, and I'm paraphrasing, spying is basically an old school, it's old school art. It's not a science. It's arcane. It takes a unique, eccentric type of individual. And one of my concerns is, Sam, that we don't have a culture, we don't have a society that embraces individualism, that embraces people like this that we need for the CIA. Your response to that?
You're 100% right. And look, we're always looking to feed this into some standard federal government hiring template, right? I don't want the guy who has a perfect 4.0 average out of some Ivy League school. I don't want a dummy. I don't want a guy who's not well read. I probably want the guy who is a little bored in the classroom. His grades are good, but they're not that good. They're not nearly as good as they could be. Why? Because he's got his mind 50,000 other places, because he wants to get out of the classroom. He wants to experience. Because when you start telling him rules, he starts thinking about ways to color outside the lines a little bit. He starts looking about, now I'm not talking about a guy who's amoral. You have to
sure.
be, but you don't like the school solution, right? One of the most brilliant ops in World War II was a British op where they kidnapped a German general in Crete, in German-occupied Greece, and took him out and got him on a boat and took him to Egypt and held him as a prisoner of war, right under the noses of his troops in the middle of the night. The guy that put together that operation, Patrick Leigh Fermor, classical scholar, read Greek, read Latin. But you know what he was doing before the war? Wandering around on foot through the Balkans, sleeping in people's barns, kind of bored by life. Now, try to figure out how the standard federal bureaucracy would go find Patrick Leigh Fermor, right? Brilliant, creative, doesn't like normal society and coloring inside the lines. And that's the kind of guy you're looking for.
Man, that is... What a great story. Again, I'm speaking to my guest. He is Sam Faddis. He is the author of Beyond Repair. Make sure you go out and get this book, The Decline and Fall of the CIA. Sam has agreed to stay with us for another segment because I do want to talk about some of the solutions. I fear that our institutions have gone woke, so to speak. So I've got more to ask Sam once we get back. This is The Carl Jackson Show. Find me on all things social media at The Carl Jackson Show. Okay, welcome back to The Carl Jackson Show. This is our last segment, and Sam Faddis, again, the author of Beyond Repair, The Decline and Fall of the CIA. And I encourage you to go out and get this book. And even if you can get a hold of his speech that he gave at Hillsdale online. And I would encourage you to read that speech. It is very good. He covers the bureaucracy that exists now in the CIA, the politicization, but also the solutions. And there are some solutions. Real quick though, Sam, it took us 10 years to find Osama Bin Laden. We touched on this briefly, but I just want to touch on it again real quick. Osama Bin Laden did something that was very simple. He just went old school. He just went old school. And this is why you need people that are eccentric, like you mentioned before, to be able to find guys like this, because there was no communications. Just talk to us briefly about why it took us so long to find Osama bin Laden.
Well, exactly as you just said, bin Laden knew what, frankly, every jihadi on the planet knows, which is we have all kinds of technical capabilities, and they kind of assume that we listen to every single cell phone call, read every email, read every text message, yada, yada. And they all know we have spy satellites, and if anything, they exaggerate their capabilities. So what did bin Laden do? He cut himself off totally. He had no cell phone, he had no Wi-Fi, he had no internet connection at the house where he stayed. And nobody who came to that house carried a cell phone, had any electronic signature. And by and large, he stayed inside in a house pretty nondescript in Pakistan for most of the time period we're looking for. So what does he do? He communicates face-to-face with couriers that come to the house in written messages that are carried away. And then at whatever point they are electronically transmitted or any kind of such signature created, it's a long way from him. So as you just said, he went old school. He went back to what we'd call bricks and sticks in the CIA. So how are you going to find him? You're going to find him because you got somebody in his inner circle. And that's the bread and butter of what CIA is built to do. But when you get bureaucratic and soft and promote people for the wrong reasons and rely too much on technical means, all of a sudden you realize you're not very good at that anymore. And the fact that, that we find him is great. That he was killed, that's what the man deserved. I don't shed a tear over that.
Same.
That it took us 10 years to do that, that's inexcusable. And that should have, a bunch of people probably should have been fired along the way. Like, this is no good, buddy. We can't wait a decade to find the most wanted man on the planet.
Yeah, this is astounding. Now, let me ask you this. I heard you speak on this, or at least I read about it. COVID. One of the reasons why, if not the main reason why the CIA exists, is you guys want to obviously prevent another, Pearl Harbor, or
Right.
but also the bioweapons. We look at COVID. I know you believe just as I do. Listen, the Wuhan lab, it was there. We knew that it existed. Just talk to us about that. I just love to hear your take on that. The COVID and COVID-19 and the Wuhan lab.
Well, look, this is inexcusable. Biowarfare is what they call a tier 0 target. What that means is when you prioritize targets, tier 0 means nothing is more important than that, because with the right biological agent, you can kill a third or half of the people in the United States. Something a lot worse than COVID. So
Sam, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Did we consider the Wuhan lab a tier 0 target at any time, as far as you know?
Well, we should have, right?
Okay.
Because
Okay.
biowarfare is tier 0. China's our number one. China's our number one strategic enemy. And they have never given up their biological warfare aspirations. I don't care what treaties they sign. It's meaningless. So you got our number one adversary, our number one fear, biowarfare, and the Wuhan lab is their only BSL-4, which means top tier lab. So if there's a priority target in communist China, it's the Wuhan lab, which means if the CIA is doing its job, you should have it wired 6 ways from Sunday. You shouldn't be able to hear. If you drop a pin in the Wuhan lab, we should have known about it. We received no warning at all of what was impending. 100% that disease came out of the lab. We can debate whether they released it deliberately or whether it jumped the fence, but it came from Wuhan. And now here's the really troubling part. It's 4 years later. If you ask the intelligence community, they will say at best something weak like, yeah, there's some possibility that might have come. So what does that tell you in plain English? We had no sources inside Wuhan in 2019, and we still have no sources inside Wuhan 4 years later. Now, that's inexcusable. That there can't be something really much more important for all of China ops to work on than that problem.
Uh, wow. I don't know. You say stuff here, Sam, and I'm sitting here. I have to make sure that I keep my jaw up. I mean, this stuff is just this is unthinkable to me. It doesn't make sense, and quite frankly, I hate to say it, but I feel like all of the administrations since 9/11, to some degree, have dropped the ball when it comes to the CIA. Quickly, I want to talk to you about some of the solutions and also recruiting. It appears as though the CIA has grown woke, just like a lot of these other institutions and inside of Washington D.C. What is that correct? First off, and if so, how do you think it's impacting the CIA?
Well, I think wokeism, in the sense that we're pursuing it now, I mean, in the sense that you and I mean it, is a disaster, right? I mean, all I care about is the competency of the man or the woman that's doing the job. I don't care about anything else. I'm sitting here in my office. I got a picture of my team in Iraq. It's like 50 guys were in front of our team house right before the actual conventional war started. We'd already been in there a year. Okay, there's a bunch of white dudes. There's black guys. There's Hispanic guys. My logs officer is a white lesbian, yada, yada. When I look at the picture, I see America.
Right.
What they all had in common was they were all incredibly competent and they were all totally committed to the mission. That's the only thing that matters. When you start choosing them based on any other criteria, I don't care. That's disaster. How do you fix it? You go back to basics. You fix it like you would fix the United States Marine Corps if you found it had gone soft. First, you put somebody in charge that knows the place. Because if you send somebody else from the outside, they will be led around by the nose and lied to and played. And then you got to have a president who says to that man or that woman, the same as FDR said to General Donovan when he created the OSS. Basically, you got a direct line to me, do whatever is necessary.
Wow.
So when Donovan was breaking a lot of eggshells creating the OSS in 42, a lot of people didn't like that. And what everybody knew was he can call FDR and FDR will pick up the phone and FDR will make it happen. Because you're going to have to go to CIA headquarters and you're going to have to probably fire God knows how many people day one. I'm talking top tier folks. You're going to have to tell a bunch of guys and gals on the 7th floor your services are no longer required and move on out. Can you do it? I remain absolutely convinced you can do that. And honestly, I say this all the time, it shocks people. I think if you went into that place with that big broom, what you'd find is that the rank and file would be cheering in the hallways. All those men and women who came there for the right reasons would be like, thank God, finally, somebody's going to come here and put us back on track and let me run the ops I need to run and take the fight to the end.
You know, honestly, that sounds. Kyle Seraphin and Stephen Friend said something similar when it came to the FBI. I mean, these guys want to be unleashed. They want to be able to do their jobs. Not everybody is going to be a whistleblower, what have you, but they really do want to do their jobs. We just have a minute remaining here. Sam, has there been any administration that has contacted you since you've written this book to say, Sam, how do we make this thing work better? The CIA, that is.
I won't say that I have had I have a number of contacts with the Trump campaign or with the Trump people. I won't say that. I won't say that Donald Trump. To be clear, Donald Trump has not officially said that. He has not directly said that, but a number of folks close to Trump, yes.
Okay, all right. Now that's good to hear because I do believe that were it to be Trump, were it to be another Republican that gets in, your voice. Honestly, you would need to be in someone's ear, quite frankly. I'm so concerned about the deep state that is growing underneath this current administration. Anyway, Sam Faddis, listen, I so appreciate you coming on. Again, go out and get his book, Beyond Repair, The Decline and Fall of the CIA. Thank you so much, Sam.
Thank you.